And good morning, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and this is what I call my morning musings. We're currently involved in a study of the eschatology of Thessalonians, and we will be focusing on 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 later. We're currently looking at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we'll get there momentarily. I do want to remind you of how excited I am about the introduction of a 15-lesson series on Acts 1, 9 to 11, when the angel promised the apostles that this same Jesus, whom you see taken from you, shall come in like manner as you see him go. Anyone who has studied covenant eschatology for any time knows that this is one of the favorite, quote, proof texts, unquote, by our opponents to prove that Jesus has not come. After all, we are told, he ascended into heaven in the body of a 5'5" Jewish man. He's got to come in like manner. Therefore, he hasn't come yet. That argument will not hold up with a close, exegetical, contextual, grammatical, and linguistic study of Acts chapter 1. You just really need to get a copy of this. Normal price is going to be $44.95 plus shipping. However, until the end of March, I'm making a very special, obviously limited time offer of $35 post-paid. Go to PayPal, send me $35. You can go to my website, eschatology.org or bibleprophecy.com for the contact information. Send me $35. Say, I want the Acts DVD series, and I'll send this to you. Limited time only. And boy, thanks so much for the many orders that came in after I introduced this just yesterday. But get yourself a copy of Acts chapter 1 DVD series. Okay, as I mentioned, we're looking at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 to correlate it with 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. Now, I don't know of anybody that denies that 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is about the gathering at the time of the resurrection, although some try to delineate between the coming of 1 Thessalonians 4 and 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. It's simply not tenable. They have to prove contextually two totally separate kinds of gatherings. But I want you to notice this. As I suggested to you yesterday, Paul writes to the Thessalonians, says, don't let anyone convince you that the day of the Lord, that is the gathering, has already occurred. Now, you really have to catch the power of what I'm about to say. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus spoke about the parable of the wheat and the tares. And he said, in explaining that parable, harvest, is harvest the gathering or not, right? Harvest is at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send forth his angels, and they shall gather the elect from the four winds. Well, is that the gathering of 1 Thessalonians 4? 9 out of 10 commentators say. Now, I understand commentators don't prove it. I'm just simply saying the church historically, the Orthodox Church has certainly understood it that way. Okay. So the gathering of Matthew 13 is the gathering of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. If not, why not? Okay. But watch this now. Do you see a train coming? Paul said, don't let anyone convince you the day of the Lord, i.e. the gathering, has already taken place. The gathering is the coming of the Lord at the end of the age. But 9 out of 10 commentators say the coming of the Lord at the end of the age for the gathering is the end of the Christian age. Wait a minute. Thessalonians was written in approximately 51 or 52. Let's just round it off and say 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 was, was written 20 years after the establishment of the Christian age. And yet, according to the Orthodox view, some in Thessalonians believe that the end of the Christian age, Matthew 13, time of the gathering, time of the coming of the Son of Man, we're supposed to believe that 20 years after the establishment of the Christian age, some at Thessalonica believed that the Christian age had already come to an end at the coming of the Lord. Really? You see, the problem here is that both the Old Covenant and the New said that the establishment of the Messianic kingdom, the kingdom that was being established in the first century, the kingdom of which they were a part, for which they were suffering, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, would never be removed. Hebrews 12:28. Look, the only kingdom, the only age that was to ever end was the Old Covenant age of Israel, represented by the temple in Jerusalem, Matthew 24:2 and 3. It is absolutely impossible to believe that anybody could convince anybody, or that anybody could believe that the Christian age had come to an end after existing for 20 years. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. Look, I've written 2 books on this entire issue. The coming of the Lord is the time of the resurrection. Paul wrote and said some, Hymenaeus and Philetus, are teaching that the resurrection has already passed. Well, if the resurrection is what, quote, orthodoxy, unquote, has always taught us, how could they believe that had already happened? And then some believed the day of the Lord and the gathering. Well, the gathering is a resurrection, had already occurred. I've written a brand new book, The Hymenaean Heresy, Reverse the Charges. I've also written another book, How is This Possible? Both of these books investigate in depth the issues that are behind 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 with the challenge. How could anybody believe that the historical orthodox view of the coming of the Lord, resurrection, and the gathering had already taken place? And you know and I know, no one could convince anyone, and no one could believe that the historical orthodox view of the coming of the Lord, the judgment, and the resurrection had already taken place. Something else is at work here. And in following segments, we'll show how Paul reversed the charges of those who believed the day of the Lord and the resurrection had already taken place. Go to my websites, order these 2 books, say that you mentioned or saw the offer on YouTube and Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. All right? You're going to save good money on this, and you really, really need these books to understand the incredible issues at work in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Keeping in mind, the gathering of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 is the gathering of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. How could anybody believe that the gathering of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 had already taken place? This is good stuff. And we got more. We'll see you on the flip side.